Hey guys, Lumen02. Actually going to show you a series of 100 Card Singleton matches that are played between myself and SenseiRob. SenseiRob's a longtime player of the 100 card format. I did not play when it was a filtered event on MTGO. But what makes this a little bit more interesting from what I typically do with 100 card is it's actually a period version of the format. So we're playing all the cards from 1993 when the initial run of Magic was generated all the way up till 2009, which wasn't when the filter was taken off, but it's kind of just the beginning of Planeswalkers. So I'm playing Red Deck Wins. I cannot forget what I know, and trying to filter from Lore Win, which is essentially where we started, all the way back to Alpha, and forget all the cards that I know now is pretty difficult. So what I'm playing with is a Red Deck Wins deck. It is a period deck, so it's Lore Win back, essentially. And this deck actually took first in some daily event back when 100 card was a filtered event, so I just snagged it up and decided, hey, I'll play it. I did change like 1 to 2 cards in it. I think Price of Progress was probably left out because it was maybe not budgetary for the player. That said, this deck is vastly different than what you would typically see in a Red Deck Wins in modern times for 100 card. It actually has a lot more utility, and it has a lot more land hatred. So it plays Ruination main, which is not something you commonly see. Blood Moon, Magus of the Moon, Dwarven Blast Miner, Dwarven Miner. Sideboard, I put in the Price of Progress. I think Price of Progress is a great card. Balduvan Horde in the sideboard, weird. I'm trying to remember what I took on. I think I put the Pyrokinesis main, because I think it's actually a better main card than whatever. There was something else in the main that was just junky. So this is the deck we're actually playing. It's you'll note that it has 37 mana sources, and a bulk of its drops are the 17/3 drops that it has there. So it's much more utility driven. So it has the land hosers that can actually acquire you card advantage. It has some weird cards, kind of like Flame Tongue Kavu, Avalanche Riders that are like all 2-for-1s, Arc Slogger. Siege Commander, like many of these cards are actually they actually have provide card advantage. Murderous Redcap, and there's like a small Goblin sub theme. So this is not a deck of my creation. I just picked it up and decided to play it. And I don't want to take away credit from someone, but I don't remember who I ended up stealing this one from. But this is the deck, and we're playing against Sensei on one of his decks. He played at the time, so I'm assuming this one is actually a build of his. So he leads off with Bayou. I just go ahead and turn 1 Wasteland on a 37 mana deck. I think I can probably draw into more to cast my spells, and Wasteland's probably not going to get better. As I said, this deck does hate out lands pretty heavily. Drawing Dwarven Miner there is nice, but we are going to need to draw an additional red source. Go ahead and get my attack in for 2. Format is a lot slower, you'll note. I missed my land drop, but I get Magma Jet, so I figure I'm probably not just done here. My opponent Tainted Packs. They end up going through Llanowar Elves, Pendelhaven, Tundra, Thoughtseize, Shriekmaw, and Natural Order. Natural Order probably during this time frame goes for Progenitus. He goes for a Vengevine here. It actually decides to stay back. I go ahead and filter my top deck with the Jet, find 2 non-lands, put them both to the bottom, draw into Murderous Redcap, which is a horrendous draw, play on another 1-drop, and say go to my opponent. My opponent Mystical Tutors, and I think he was actually here looking for the Natural Order so you can get the Progenitus, but he ends up having to eat a humble pie and just play out the Luxodon Hierarch, which is probably good enough. When I miss again on lands, I just go ahead and pack it in. Rough draw. It happens. So we lose on this Red Deck Wins deck, just due to the mana count there, just not happening for us. Going into Game 2, this hand is questionable. It's got a lot of lands. I don't keep it on the premise that I need to have a bunch of lands in my hand because my play didn't work out last time. I think last time we just had a very bad draw. But what this has going for it is it has a shock for a turn 1 mana dork, and it has the Dwarven Miner. I don't think Sulfur Elemental, which is a main deck card, evidently, during this time frame, is going to be exceptionally good against his deck. He's not on White Weenie. But it is a flash threat that cannot be countered, so that's a thing. I do go ahead and shock this mana dork just to slow my opponent down. Draw into Goblin Warchief, which is fine. Play out the Miner here. The Miner gets Shriekmaw out immediately, which, that stinks because that was kind of what brought the hand together. I play out my Hasted 2/2 for 3 mana. Not great. Draw into a Blast Miner. Again, this period deck, evidently hated out non-basic lands, and playing against Sensei, it's kind of nice. Sensei plays out a Solemn Simulacrum, so he's got 3 basics, which means it's going to be tough to keep him off mana. I do flip my Dwarven Blast Miner. I played it Morph there because he could have assumed that it was Blistering Firecat. That's about the only red morph that I can think of that people played or would play during this time frame. Obviously, you have more now, but really a lot of morphs don't get played in red, or red deck wins at least. Genesis gets played out. Genesis is obviously a period card. That card is aged poorly. It's very good in this format, though, as long as you have lands to play it. I get 2 off of this Goblin Ringleader. The mana savings off the Goblin Warchief is actually very nice because I'm still able to Dwarven Blast Miner here. My opponent Armageddon's, and then jokingly we kind of joke about like how he probably should have taken that out. It's situationally fine here, especially if all he has in hand are lands. So he's able to vindicate my other land. I don't know if that was right. I think I liked blowing up the War Chief probably a little better. I finally blocked the Solemn Simulacrum here. Draw into the first mountain, which is nice because I can play the Mud Brawler Cohort. He gets in with Genesis. I'm fine with that. Plays out the Eternal Witness. Now, he knows my hand. If I draw... Well, he knows my hand except for the Mountain and the Figure of Destiny. The Mountain I drew for the turn and the Figure of Destiny. So I go ahead and Gem Palm Incinerator here to cycle into another land. Get in 5 damage. I think his attack was pretty aggressive, but at some point in time, he obviously does need to start trying to win the game. Here, we just blow up a land and say, hey, go. Because I think eventually I'm going to exhaust his mana. I do get to play a 1-drop this turn, blow up the land that finds 2 more lands. I draw Hell Sunder for the turn. Just go ahead and cast it and say, hey, have Swords to Plowshares or Path to Exile or lose the game here and end up getting him with this red deck wins deck. All right, game 3. So this is actually a very cool game. So you have to note, like, Red Deck Wins actually, I think, was a lot better during this time period. The best of life gainers that commonly see play today were not a thing. So, like, the best ones you had were, like, Kitchen Finks, Luxodon Hierarch, and Exalted Angel. Were probably the best life gain abilities that, like, were on a relevant body that actually did something. You know, so you don't have, like, Thragtusk, you don't have Obstinate Baloth, you know, there's a few others I'm probably just not thinking of, but, like, the hatred for Red Deck Wins, like, I guess what I mean to say is the efficiency of creatures that could hate out Red Deck Wins just wasn't there. Red kind of was the show. So I'm jokingly tell him, oh, turn 3 Exalted Angel, and he has it. So we're going to get Dome down to 16. He's back up to 20. So the Goblin Sparksmith, like, is a card that rarely sees play nowadays. And it may be a disappointment because the card is actually pretty interesting. I think, you know, there is a Goblins deck that just doesn't see a lot of play in 100 card. My strategy right now is to, 1, not die, but I'm going to go very low. I'm able to Murderous Redcap the Exalted Angel down to 3. Or, I'm sorry, for 2, and then Dome it for 3 off the Sparksmith. Which is going to get this life-linking threat off my back. And then I have Blood Moon to follow it up if my opponent is able to kind of peter out. I do attack with the Jackal Pup here because he can block it and put me to 3, but I'll be able to Mog Fanatic away his threat. He does putrefy my Sparksmith. I play the Blood Moon, sack the Mog Fanatic to do 1, and then Dome the Angel for 2 and kill it. So, you know, Red Deck Wins, I think, you know, has probably gotten worse over time because, like, here it seemed really good. This deck that I looked at reminded me more of, like, a Sly style deck where it had a lot of, like, utility creatures that could accrue you advantage, as opposed to, like, the speed-based burn decks that are more viable probably now. They're just, you know, generally probably a little bit better because they're just fast. This deck is, for the time, though, the period that we're playing this, which is 2009 and prior, exceedingly fast, despite having what I would call a glut of 3 drops in a deck that really wants to get on board rapidly. But what it does is it makes up for that with card advantage. You saw, like, we were able to beat an Exalted Angel there, not with a lot of life and under very narrow margins, just by having some of those cards that nowadays don't see as much play, like the Goblin Sparksmith. That all said, I think for modern 100 card players, I do think there is a good Goblins deck out there that no one has played since the time frame I've been recording it. It used to be a more played deck back in the day. There used to be kind of like a division in the red deck wins, I think, like a long time ago, and like I'm thinking like circa 2011, where like you had the burn style, like red deck wins, just good red stuff decks, and then you had the Goblin synergy decks. And I think the Goblin synergy decks actually probably do have a leg up against the red deck wins style, like just the good stuff red decks, against like the Green X mid-range matchups, because it has creature cards like Sparksmith. It has the Cycler that are actually good removal and value on their own, and they're actually not bad against like white weenie style decks. You look at this deck and it's got Pyrokinesis main, it's got the Siege Gang Commander, the Slogger, Flame Tongue Kavu. It's got a lot of decent cards, Fire Ice. It's got a lot of decent cards that are actually not bad against like white-based aggro decks. And then it's got this whole sub-theme of just hating out non-basic lands. Is it right? Probably not. I don't think you probably need Ruination main, although I did cast it against Sensei in like an earlier game, and it was kind of just amusing. But, pretty cool to kind of go back and like look at how, this format used to look when it was actually a filtered event in MTGO, play a couple period-based games against a guy who did play it during that time frame, SenseiRob, and just see the differences. Now, I may at some point go back and try to build, given the period's availability of cards. I obviously did not build this deck. I just grabbed one up and said, hey, let's give it a try. It obviously did well. And now I see why. Looking at the deck, it kind of looks like a pile of crap to me by more modern standards. But it can play a game of Magic, obviously decently well. I mean, we played some cool ones there that were very grindy and kind of incremental. The only thing that I would say this deck has going for it over other decks is that, in certain matchups, you can just win. Like, Blood Moon probably just wins a lot of games. At this time frame in the format, there's no like abrupt decays. You realistically like had to have the hate to get it. And I'm trying to think right now like what even during that, because you don't have Reclamation Sage either. I'm trying to think what during that time frame would actually like get it. Kasali Pride Mage would be one for a Sensei style deck. Acidic Slime, that's very slow. It requires 2 green mana. It's probably not going to come into 4. Realistically, like, what are you playing to get rid of it? Like, Vindicate? No, it's not an instant. Probably, like, Mortify. Mortify I could see being a playable during this time frame, just due to the Blood Moon style decks like this. But anyway, kind of like reminiscing and kind of jumping back, over a decade or close to a decade ago in the format, and giving it a shot to see kind of how it played out. Had a lot of fun playing this period style deck, and if it interests you, give it a try. Go delve through some of the older lists, and you too can play decks with Black Vice in the main. All right, guys, enjoy and take care now.